Welcome back to Professing Christians. This is Lisa. So, continuing in the same theme of the last couple of episodes, I want to read and add thoughts to the post that I just did on the WordPress blog. This one is titled "The Camp of Saints Are Here." And I'd like to preface that with just kind of, transparency. I just came into the realization that we are living in the little season like 7 months ago, December of 2024. At that time, I had been kind of really wondering, why doesn't the eschatology of the time that we were being handed, that we're headed into the Great Tribulation, all these things, why was this not meshing with everything else, like just all of the things in the world? It just, it was making sense, but then there was other things that the Lord would bring up, like, look at this. And I'm like, I know, and this other theology or doctrine does not jive with the end times theology doctrine, and it's just, and I would just kind of waver back and forth, and I'm like, this is not, it's just not making sense to me. Why doesn't everything make sense? It should make sense. God is not an author of chaos. And at that time, I started praying for wisdom and discernment and all those things. I completely had taken a break from writing the blog, and I was like, Lord, there's just so many inconsistencies, and I just can't write right now. I didn't do anything on the podcast. I had been doing some posts here and there on the Great Tribulation, and I just stopped. It just fell off. It felt off, and it all fell off. So about that time, that's when things started entering my feed on YouTube about orphan trains, mud floods, things like that, which led into the little season. That was about the time that Understanding Conspiracy and JT Follows JC had Gunnar Heinsohn on. And that was fascinating. That was secular evidence. Absolutely fascinating. And then one of them interviewed Madeline with Leaving Babylon. And she has been talking about the Camp of Saints and the land of Jesus and these types of things. And I have been just completely blown away about how it just makes so much sense. It ties everything together. Finally, in my so many years of Christian study, does something make so much sense? So let's just go on and read the post. This is what I wrote. The camp of saints are here. Revelation 20, verses 7 through 9, tells us that in the little season, there is a camp of saints in or by the beloved city. Verse 7, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations, which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city, and fire came down from God out of heaven, and devoured them. Side note, right now we'll focus on the camp of the saints before we tackle the beloved city that is in that verse. We know this takes place at the very end of the little season because in the next verse, Satan is thrown into the lake of fire. However, we aren't told that the camp of saints is set up during the lull season, just that they are there. And that seems to lead to the culmination of Satan's deception, which is to get as many to surround this camp as possible. I wonder more about who is in the camp rather than where it's located. I'm sure it is in an undisclosed and probably cloaked location. Otherwise, the evils in charge in this world would try to get at them before it's time, and they have to remain protected. I also believe that as we near the time of the culmination of evil and the attempt to surround them, the camp of saints, that more people would be waking up to the season that we are in. Is that happening now? On a side note, I wonder. There is a lot of people waking up to this season. Could we be closer to the surrounding than we thought? Okay, let's go on. But again, who is in this camp? Why do I wonder so much about that? I'm going to go out on a limb and say it is the redeemed of the first resurrection. Looking at Revelation 20, verse 4, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. First, reigning implies kingship. Christ is king, then and now, and they reigned with him. Where does reigning take place in medieval times? In a castle, of course. So it's interesting to me that the use of the word camp, the 6 times it's used in the Acts of the Apostles, every time refers to a castle. And who did they reign with Christ over? The people that survived the cataclysm, apparently. I know I wasn't sure before if everyone was wiped out, but there had to be some that survived. We also know that if Jesus wanted saints to reign with him, there would be people to reign over. Also, these people would be having children, right? And again, evil continued on because the secret societies that started with Nimrod, my best guess, would be underground, so to speak, waiting for their master to return and continue on with his part in the grand scheme of things. At least this is what I have gleaned from looking at the whole picture. The reason I say the redeemed is because of Paul's statement, Romans 8, verse 21, because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and travails in pain together until now. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. When I was in the pre-trib camp, I often would wonder over these verses, but it makes so much sense now, doesn't it? They knew from the promises of Christ that there was a redemption, aka a glorification, coming for the overcomers. This deliverance from the bondage of corruption, also talked about in 1 Corinthians 15, was for the saints, the first fruits, and then those that were his at his coming. I'm speaking specifically of 1 Corinthians 15:23. Is Paul saying that these were the 144,000 firstfruits of Revelation 14, verse 4? I certainly don't know for sure, but I would bet on it. These reigning people had a crown like no other. They endured and overcame some of the worst things imaginable. Things we will likely never have to endure. I bet Moses is there. After all, his body was fought over for some reason. Consider Jude, verse 9. Yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses. Durst not, it said, I believe that means dared not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke thee. I bet Enoch and Elijah are there. They were both translated alive, and I think that's because God wanted 2 witnesses of his coming glory in the streets of Jerusalem during the Great Tribulation, which already took place. These 2 hadn't died yet, but they did during that time, the time of the Great Tribulation. Remember, their body lay in the streets for 3 days? And let's not forget about those of great faith listed in Hebrews 11. Was Paul giving us a hint? This redemption, I suppose, would look like a transfiguration, would it not? Jesus gave Peter, James, and John a preview of that up on a high mountain when Jesus' face did shine as the sun. Matthew chapter 17, verses 1 and 2. And after 6 days, Jesus takes Peter, James, and John, his brother, and brings them up into a high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them. And his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. Again, Paul writes to fellow believers of the awesomeness this transfiguration will be. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 17 and 18. Now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. But we all with open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image, from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord. I admit I always thought this was a slow spiritual transformation available to us as we serve God from day to day. But the word changed here is the same word as transfigured in Matthew 17. The verse we just read where Jesus was transfigured. According to Strong's Concordance, it means to literally transform. Transform to what? The verse before it says, the risen Lord is in a spiritual state. In order for the overcomers of the first resurrection to gain the redemption of their body into this glorified state, they would have to have been transfigured when they were redeemed, correct? I mean, the word redemption means deliverance. They definitely were delivered from the wrath that came. Speaking of 1 Thessalonians 1:10. In conclusion, somewhere on this earth, there is a camp or castle, again, in a beloved city, with a bunch of spiritually glorified individuals who spent 1,000 years reigning with Christ and are now awaiting Satan's doom. They know they'll be surrounded or attempt to be surrounded, and I doubt they are scared. So that's my thoughts on the camp of saints. I have other thoughts on it. I hesitate to say where I am taking it next. There is some that think the New Jerusalem already came down, and is that the beloved city? is that the castle? I mean, it would make sense to me. I'm not full preterist, where I think that we already are living in the new heavens and the new earth, where the lion lays down with the lamb. And I mean, there's Satan's still out there deceiving people. There's still predatory animals. Like, if a lion and a lamb were in the same room, I'm pretty sure the lamb would lose. So I'm not full preterism. But I do believe in this little season, there very well could be the New Jerusalem, where Jesus possibly comes and goes. I mean, he is seated at the right hand of the Father, but is he not omnipresent as well? Like, I believe that he is wherever he is needed and wanted. That's what I firmly believe. So, all right. Well, I'm going to leave it there, and thank you for joining me. And again, this is Lisa with Professing Christians.